This is the walkthrough video for PCTC 2020-21, round 1, question 6, safe seats. Okay, so this question is actually quite tough. I think there are loads and loads of different ways of doing this. So I'm just going to show you the way that I thought of first, which I think is pretty good. It's also a bit difficult, and it may introduce some new concepts to you, but it's definitely worth learning the different ways you can solve a problem. So you can learn to attack different problems from different angles, and that should just improve your critical thinking skills when it comes to coding. Okay, so first thing to do is to input our 20 chairs. And I'm going to use a list comprehension to do this. So let's create a variable called chairs, which is going to be a list. And the list is just going to input a number as an integer. And it's going to do that. It's going to do that 20 times because there are going to be 20 chairs. So now chairs is going to be a list of all of these zeros and ones essentially that we've inputted. And now we can get to the actual algorithm. So to do this, I'm essentially going to create a sliding window of 3 chairs. Okay, because a chair can be filled with a student if the 2 chairs either side of it are not filled with a student. So if we take any 3 consecutive chairs in the input, for example, let's take these 3. Well, can we put a student in the middle chair? No, we can't, because the other 2 chairs beside of it are not free. And let's try the same thing here. Can you put a student in the middle chair? No, because the middle chair already has a student in it. How about if we take something like this? Then yes, all 3 chairs are empty. So that means you can put a student in the middle chair, and they'll be next to 2 empty chairs. And that's essentially the concept we're going to use. So we're going to check the first 3, then we're going to check the next set of 3, and the next set of 3, and we're going to just keep sliding our window of 3 chairs across like this. And that's why it's called the sliding window technique. And every time we slide the window, we're only going to be checking whether the middle chair can house another student or not. Because the middle chair, so we need to know whether the middle chair is free. We also need to know whether both chairs beside the middle chair are also free. So that's why we have to check the middle chair every time we do the sliding window. Okay, and you may have noticed a problem with this, which is you can't just like start the sliding window at the first one, because there's only, like, for example, if you start the sliding window at the first one, we have this, then we have this, then we have this, and then we get our full sliding window of 3. So we can't start it at the first one. So what we actually need to do is we need to pad both sides of our list with zeros. So we're just going to pad both sides of our list with empty chairs. So to do that, let's just do chairs.insert. At position 0, we want to insert a 0. And at the end, we also want to add a 0. So we can just append a 0. So we've added an empty chair to the start, and we've added an empty chair to the end. And you'll see why this works soon. So we've got our list, which is our 20 inputted chairs, plus an empty chair at the start and an empty chair at the end. So now we want to create the sliding window. And so we need to use a for loop to do that. Let's just say for I in range, what chair are we starting at? Well, we're starting at the first chair, which is actually now going to be the second chair, because we already added another one to the start. So it's going to be index 1. We want to start at index 1, and we want to go all the way up until our last inputted chair, which should be index 19. But again, because we added 1 to the start, that's now going to be index 20. But of course, because Python's range is non-inclusive, we also need to add another one. So we want to go from 1 inclusive to 21 non-inclusive. So this is our sliding window range. And so that means we're essentially going to look at each of these chairs in order like this. As of right now, it doesn't look like a sliding window. And so to create a sliding window, let me just fix the typo up here. To create a sliding window, let's take I, which is our current chair, but we don't want to take just that chair. We want to take the chair before it, as well as the chair after it. So we want to start off with the chair before it and go up until the chair after it. But again, we get this issue of Python not actually ending on your second number here, just like with the range function. So let's just add another one to make sure Python gets the correct 3 chairs. So what this does is it goes from the first chair to the 20th chair that we inputted, and then it takes a sliding window of 3 chairs centered around the one we inputted. So this is actually called list slicing. It's a very useful concept in Python, worth getting good at. And so this is our sliding window, and what we need to do is we need to check if there are essentially no ones in the sliding window. So if the sum of these three numbers in the window is equal to 0, then we know there are no ones, right? Because the sliding window is just three consecutive seats, for example, those three seats. And if all of those are 0, then they're all empty, and therefore we can put a kid in the middle chair. But if they're not equal to 0, so 0 plus 1 plus 0 is equal to 1, therefore at least one of those chairs has a kid in them, and therefore we can't add any more children to that middle chair, because the middle chair has to be free, and the two adjacent chairs have to also be free. So you have to get a series of 3 empty chairs like this, which sum to 0. So if it does sum to 0, then let's actually add a student at that position. So chairs I is now going to be equal to 1, because 1 represents a student sitting on that chair. And we also need to keep a running total of how many students have we added. So our total is just going to start off at 0, but if we can add another student, let's increase our total by 1. And just to finish off the code, we can print off our total. And you may be wondering why we have to update chairs I, because this is not actually a very useful metric, right? Because the metric we want is the total. But we need to update chairs I because you can imagine, for example, if you had a stretch of 4 seats like this, and you decide to add, you look at these 3 seats first, and you decide to add a student here. If you don't update the list, then your sliding window is going to move down again, and you're going to have these 3 seats. And to the code, it looks like these 3 seats are empty, but we've actually already decided to add a student here. So what we need to do is, once we've decided we're going to add a student, we need to update the list to reflect that. And that means an error like this won't happen. And this gets us all the marks.